It takes a special person to be a SEAL. When you get up in the morning, you don't know if you'll soon be finding yourself 30 feet underwater or 10,000 feet in the air. Being a SEAL requires exceptional motivation and physical conditioning. Parachuting from an airplane or helicopter, swimming or rafting long distances to shore from a ship, and locking out of submarines are all SOP for these elite naval commandos. Prolonged exposure to Arctic water, jungle swamps, and desert survival tactics are all just another day at the office for the Navy SEAL. SEAL missions have produced big headlines for most of the 1980s. Early in the decade, the U.S. incursion into Grenada saw SEALs in action as an invasion force for the first time since Vietnam. SEAL teams infiltrated the island and secured national radio and television stations prior to the American assault. In the Middle East, SEALs were instrumental in protecting United States shipping interests from Iranian terrorists. The end of the decade saw Navy SEALs on a dual mission in Panama. While one SEAL unit immobilized Panamanian patrol boats, another fire team secured Noriega's private airfield, preventing the dictator's escape. Though heavily outgunned, the SEALs held the airport all night until reinforcements arrived. Modern-day SEALs are tasked with missions never dreamt of by their predecessors. Today's SEAL is the byproduct of a half-century of evolution, starting with the Naval Combat Demolitions Units of World War II. Although other nations had used combat swimmers before, the American units were different from their inception.
The French had them. They'd use their frogmen to blow up ships. Okay. The same with the Italians. Okay, and the English. All right. We started different. We were an invasion force. So in other words, our frogmen were used to find out what obstacles were in the water to prevent landing craft from coming in. That was the main purpose.
This basic difference was to become a pivotal factor on D-Day, when these naval combat demolition units were called into action. All along the Normandy coast, the beaches were covered by the most formidable man-made barriers ever erected. The Germans had built 500,000 death traps made of wood, concrete, and steel. Most of them were topped with mines that would explode on touch. Between these obstacles, the Nazis had buried over 5 million mines. As artillery and gunfire rained down around them, the demolitioneers waded toward the rows of obstacles. These brave men tied demo packs to the obstacles and wired them together with detonating cord. Tremendous explosions blew 50-yard wide gaps into the rows of beach defenses. Afterwards, the men had to wade back through the rising tide waters to put floating markers along the sides of the gap to enable assault boats to find a safe route to the beach. Of the 175 naval combat demolitioneers in the Omaha Beach invasion, 52% of the men were casualties. The Normandy invasion marked the last major invasion in which the demolitioneers were not swimmers. At Tarawa, hundreds of American lives were lost when landing craft were grounded on coral reefs far offshore. Marines were cut down by sniper fire and drowned in trenches as they waded ashore. To prevent this type of tragedy from happening again, underwater demolition teams would be used to clear the way for all future amphibious invasions. It was here in the Pacific that Lieutenant Commander Draper Kaufman and his demolitioneers would become the first American underwater frogmen. The UDTs had been trained in Fort Pierce, Florida, for what was referred to as sneak and peek warfare. At the time, they were required to swim no more than 600 yards. With their new mission, the reefs they would be exploring and demolishing were 3 times that far offshore. The lives of these men would depend on their preparation. The UDT swimming requirement was automatically up to a mile, and the buddy system was established. Armed with only their compasses, swim fins, and masks, the underwater demolition teams would swim toward heavily defended beaches as they surveyed the ocean floor. They would map out obstacles, make depth readings, and take sand samples in preparation for amphibious assaults. Later, they would return to place charges on any reefs or obstacles that needed to be removed prior to invasion.
The swimmers, you'd be scattered, and it'd be very difficult for them to see you, you know. What they did was a couple of times they'd fire mortars, and they would be wicked. Rifle fire, not too much, you know, but with mortar, they'd explode right at the water's level, and the concussion, you'd get hit with that, you know. That was the worst part.
Although the Marines took credit for being the first ashore during every invasion, frequently it was the UDTs that cleared the way. When the Marines hit the Guam beaches, they found signs that said, "Welcome, Marines, courtesy UDT-4." After World War II, all but 4 of the underwater demolition teams were demobilized.
The guy that really preserved the teams was a Commander Doug Fain. He kept the teams together. If it hadn't been for him, there probably wouldn't have been a UDT after World War II. And he really took the lead in this and got involved in the scuba, and then operating off fleet-type submarines off of Chesapeake Bay and also down in the Caribbean, locking out of torpedo tubes, just locking out of the submarines through the normal locks, trying to develop tactics and techniques associated with that.
For the first time, the Navy was preparing UDT personnel for long-range missions behind enemy lines in future conflicts. The UDT program began to offer night reconnaissance classes, special warfare weaponry courses, and small unit tactics. This foresight proved to be well-founded when war broke out in Korea. UDT personnel were now capable of carrying out raids against the North Koreans. Demolitioneers cut off North Korean supply channels by destroying bridges, tunnels, and railway lines. In their first cold water operations, frogmen wearing rubber suits cleared mines from channels and cut up North Korean fishing nets. The teams played an important role in MacArthur's landing at Incheon. It was the UDT who discovered that there were no viable alternatives to that landing site. In a major step forward, underwater demolition teams added scuba capability to their operations.
The first opportunity they had to use scuba was there were several minesweepers that had been sunk in about 100 foot of water, and they wanted to recover the crypto gear. And that was the first time that the UDTs were actually used their diving capability with open circuit gear. Went down. They were not able to recover the crypto gear, but they destroyed the minesweepers.
The Korean conflict opened many new horizons for the underwater demolition teams. Paramount among them was the evolution of equipment, from snorkels to closed-circuit breathing systems, and from dynamite to plastic explosives. In Korea, the UDTs grew into a compact, hard-hitting mobile unit, and they moved inland for the first time. The post-Korea era saw frogmen conquering new frontiers. UDT has helped install the distant early warning line of radar stations using diving technology spawned in Korea. Protected by a wetsuit and an outer dry suit, swimmers could work for up to an hour at a time in the 27-degree Arctic waters.
All right, lift off and the clock has started. Yes, sir, reading you loud and clear. 1.2 G, cabin at 14 PSI, oxygen is go.
The most spectacular peacetime mission for the UDTs was their involvement in the space program. Waterborne landings were an integral part of the American space program.
7/10 of the world's surface is water, and it seemed like an easier target. And since we had frogmen that could go anywhere in the water, well, let's go ahead and see if they couldn't do it. Let's adapt them somehow. It seemed fairly logical.
The space program kept the UDTs on their toes. Every space capsule that NASA launched, whether manned or not, was recovered by frogmen.
I do know one thing, that for every launch, every shot, our guys would go into training with dummy capsules for upwards to 2 to 3 months and work in that team effort and getting in there, because they had to get in and get that. There was a period of time, if I recall, that they had to get that collar around that capsule, because after a certain period of time it would be sayonara.
Although the astronauts got the glory, the UDTs had the satisfaction of another job well done.
I think most of us felt this way about it, that if these guys are going to sit on top of that huge building full of ignitable fuel and let themselves get blasted up into the earth, well, the least we could do is catch them when they come down.
With the advent of the space shuttle, waterborne recovery is a thing of the past. But SEAL involvement in the space program is not. When Space Shuttle Atlantis lifted off in December 1988, it carried on board as mission specialist Commander William Shepard, a Navy SEAL. His career as an astronaut proves once again that SEALs are prepared to operate successfully in any environment, including outer space.
That challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
President Kennedy foresaw the need for special troops to be used for intelligence gathering and counter-guerrilla warfare. He wanted men who could run clandestine missions in extreme conditions. In January 1962, the Navy's Special Warfare Community was created. Volunteers came from the ranks of the underwater demolition teams. The size and composition of a SEAL team was initially set at 10 officers and 50 enlisted men. Within a month of being commissioned, the first SEAL units were operating in Vietnam. The primary SEAL role was to be counterinsurgency, to defend freedom by helping developing countries ward off communist-backed guerrilla movements. Trained and equipped to conduct unconventional warfare and clandestine operations, SEAL teams were tasked with maintaining capabilities in reconnaissance, demolitions, intelligence collection, and the infiltration and exfiltration of troops. Another SEAL mission was to act as special advisors to our South Vietnamese allies. SEAL platoons operated in remote areas, concentrating mainly on listening post and ambush-type operations.
Two of the different types of operations we went on in Vietnam were reconnaissance and information gathering, and we called them sneak and peek. And then there was ambush and demolition ambush and prisoner snatches, and we called them wham and scram. The reasons for both are kind of obvious.
A common phrase during the war was that the day belongs to us, but Charlie owns the night. That ownership quickly changed hands whenever the green faces patrolled. SEALs proved to be the most ferocious animals in the jungle.
The hysteria is what we wreaked on the enemy. We had some hits. We were taking injuries, but what I saw as just total routing and hysteria was inflicted on the enemy.
UDTs and Navy SEALs operated simultaneously in Vietnam. The UDTs continued their amphibious support role, and SEALs became commandos. They were the same type of men, but on different missions. UDTs continued to use their demolition capabilities to blast channels for Allied naval craft. Their diving abilities were used to recover weapons and bodies from downed aircraft. SEALs were trained to become snatch artists and assassins. They conducted raids deep into enemy-held territory to capture and destroy enemy arms caches and supplies. prisoner snatch operations proved SEALs to be capable of killing or capturing enemy officers, even in their own camps. It was through prisoners that SEALs gained insights into troop and weapon buildups.
We chased a man named Bei Tao all through the Yumen forest, and we ran, I'd say, at least 6 operations to capture Bei Tao. Well, I burst into hooches and find the hammock swinging, and that sucker done made it out the back door because a goose gave him away, or gave us away, or a barking dog, or a rustling chicken. And we were after this man in particular because he was a Viet Cong infrastructure in this particular forest, and we knew he knew what we had to find out.
Using weapons ranging from crossbows to machine guns, Navy SEALs brought a personal war to the enemy in a previously safe area with deadly results. War reports tally a kill ratio of 150 to 200 enemy dead for every SEAL fatality. Most SEAL operations took place at night. As SEALs lay in enemy ambush, they deliberately chose uncomfortable postures to stay alert.
Because of the way the war went down, it was a war of waiting and quiet and long quiet, and then boom, it erupts real quick, and then all of a sudden it's back to being waiting and quiet. The terror and the horror of the war, on how it's being fought against us and how we are trying to defeat them at their own game, yes, it does. It becomes a war of terror, and the ultimate terror wins.
SEALs in Vietnam used equipment and techniques never before used to deploy troops into combat. Swimmer delivery vehicles, or SDVs, were miniature submarines. SDVs delivered SEALs and their weapons to or from covert operations. Invisible from the surface, these SDVs allowed SEALs to work off submarines without detection. A less frequently used insertion ability was a skydiving technique called Halo.
High altitude, low opening is Halo, and your job is to start high so they can't hear you or can't see you, and your targeted area where your fire team is going into is below. You drop in on them from the sky and they can't see you. You can do it at night. Nobody can see you. You're on the ground and been delivered silently from the air. They don't know where you've come from.
To outfox the Viet Cong at their own guerrilla tricks, SEALs used a broad range of ingenuity and gadgets. Using diverse techniques such as grabbing ropes from low-flying helicopters, snatching a line from a speeding riverboat, or simply fading into the scenery, SEALs were able to elude the enemy after successfully completing a mission. Small in number, SEAL personnel never exceeded 200 in country at any time. However, SEAL accomplishments are legion. Navy SEALs received more awards for valor per capita than any other military group in Vietnam. SEAL teams in Vietnam were remarkable in their achievements because they were no less remarkable in their training. Training is the thread that connects all SEALs. Known by the acronym BUDS, SEAL training is the toughest military training in the world. BUDS training is based on the theory that a man is capable of 10 times more output than normal if he is properly trained. It all starts at Basic Underwater Demolition School, and it starts out running. For the next 25 weeks, every move is made at a run. BUD/S trainees run before breakfast. Then it's hours of calisthenics, followed by another run, this time through the obstacle course. Then there is swimming, lots of it, with longer distances every day, and most of it in the ocean. Trainees learn to act as teams through boat drills and special exercises that require group cooperation. Working together is a concept that is reinforced over and over throughout BUD/S training. It isn't all PT. In between are classes on weapons, hand-to-hand combat, survival, and different types of scuba gear. Trainees learn how to set charges on land and underwater. Trainees practice being dropped and picked up from speeding boats. Whether performing hydrographic mapping, locking out of a submarine escape trunk, or swimming up for beach reconnaissance, team members learn they must literally place their lives in each other's hands. Historically, fewer than 30% of trainees ever complete BUD/S training. Most drop out during Hell Week. As the name implies, this exercise is designed to weed out quitters and those unable to function under extreme duress. Hell Week is a never-ending series of 5-mile swims to shore, attacks on defended positions, infiltrations, and ambushes. Throughout Hell Week, trainees are deprived of sleep and fed mostly sea rations. This is topped off by constant physical and mental harassment designed to make trainees quit the program. Surviving Hell Week takes more than strength. It takes an attitude.
No matter how bad it hurts, I'll go. No matter how bad my lungs hurt, my body hurts, I'll go until I pass out, and then I just can't go anymore. But I'll get back up and take off again.
SEALs have a mindset that likes challenge. They want to be special, and they are willing to pay the price. A SEAL, above all, is a man who doesn't know when he is beaten. For SEALs, BUD/S training is just the beginning. The next 2.5 months consist of more weapons and explosives training, advanced skin diving and scuba techniques, rappelling, martial arts training, and parachute school. After that, SEALs attend Special Warfare School, where they study survival and guerrilla warfare techniques. There are classes in sniping, booby traps, espionage, and intelligence gathering. During all of this, the physical training never lets up. Instead, it gets tougher, with swims against the tide and through undertows, and with 15-mile runs in the sand along the beach. It's not physical toughness, it's mental toughness that gets men through. SEALs believe that fitness is a byproduct of personal integrity.
One of the things Admiral Kaufman did when he started the teams in Fort Pierce, he went through personally with all his officers the first class and did everything the troops. And the one thing that is the same today as it always has been, that the officers and the men go through the same training.
Going through BUD/S training together creates a bond. SEAL officers are expected to lead by example, not by rank.
The changes between Vietnam and today in the teams would start with training. During the Vietnam era, they did try to increase the number of trainees and tadpoles because they needed them for the SEAL teams, but they still tried to wash people out of the program in training. Training was tough. They didn't try to help you through. Training still is tough, but if you get hurt, you're not washed out of the program, they'll set you back and improve you and give you training, and you get another crack at it. So therefore, I think the change that's come in training has been from washing people out to helping them get through so that they actually have more of a better animal, almost a scientific animal.
Although SEAL training is long and tough, it ensures that whenever SEALs are sent out on a mission, they have a better than even chance of coming back. That is no less true today than it ever was. Starting from the inception of the Naval Combat Demolition Units in World War II and culminating with the merger of the UDTs and SEAL teams in 1983, the SEAL history is a proud one.
SEALs, to me, are the cornerstone of American foreign policy. We're keeping the wars, the hotspots, away from the borders of America.
I wanted to get involved. And I think the involvement of all of the SEALs, UDT, SEALs, Riverine personnel, everybody that got in there and was doing it, felt better about doing it than not, even at the risk that it took to do it.
SEALs still have important jobs to do, even though we're not in a war like we were in Vietnam. From blowing up the oil rigs and the oil stanchion headquarters against the Iranian attack on the shipping, from stemming the flow of communism in Grenada, and from helping beat back the drug flow against the dictator down in Panama. We still have a lot of work cut out for us.
He happened to be there at the right time, and we were called upon to do the job, and we did it. And I didn't see anybody else standing around jumping in there, volunteering for it.
I haven't forgotten any faces. Names, I remember them as soon as I hear them, but I can't just call the list off. But all the faces are there. Everybody looks the same in my mind as they did the day last time I saw them. We're all together yet. In our minds, we are all together. And I don't think there's one of us that have forgotten any of us.